Pooh. Attention Deficit Disorder. Pooh has ADD, but he isn't hyperactive as those with ADHD are. He easily gets lost in his own world and loses track of what he's doing. He has a short attention span and obsessive fixations. Honey. His attempts to get what he wants are impulsive and poorly thought out, e.g., disguising himself as a rain cloud to get honey. When he wants to get hold of something that he wants, honey, he keeps stimulating himself to the point of oversaturation, i.e., binge eating. He's distractible, forgettable, and disorganized. He's inattentive and loses things. Pooh is kind-hearted and well-meaning, but also not within the bounds of normal cognitive functioning. Piglet. Generalized anxiety disorder. Piglet is excessively anxious and worried. He worries about a great number of things and finds it difficult to control his worry. His anxiety is always with him, making him uncomfortable in a wide range of situations. He frequently anticipates negative outcomes and stutters because he's so scared. His anxiety causes him to overthink and get stuck in negative thought loops. Piglet worries more than is warranted by actual events. He also expects the worst that can happen, even when there's no apparent reason to do so. He's unable to let go of his worries and is indecisive for fear of making the wrong decision. His anxiety is not a phobia, but a generalized condition. Tigger. ADHD. Impulsive-Hyperactive. Unlike Pooh, who has inattentive ADD, Tigger has ADHD of the impulsive-hyperactive variety. He's always bouncing, gets overly excited, and cannot pay attention to one thing for too long. He has a high stimulus threshold and trouble feeling fear. His overconfidence results in dangerous and reckless behavior on the one hand, and the belief that he can do anything on the other. His abnormally high energy level causes him to interrupt and intrude upon others, as well as to blurt out answers before a question has even been completed. His inability to learn from the frightening and hazardous incidents he gets himself into means that he bounces back almost immediately and is ever ready to pursue the next source of excitement. Rabbit. Obsessive-compulsive. Rabbit has recurrent and persistent urges that everything must be perfect. He's also marked by compulsive and repetitive behaviors, such as ordering and checking things. He feels driven to live out his obsessions and to enforce rules that must be applied rigidly. His garden must always be in perfect order. Everything he owns has its proper place, and it's upsetting to him when someone changes things around. His house is neat and organized, and he's constantly cleaning it. He has to keep everything in order and feels that everything depends on this. However, we never see any acute dangers that Rabbit actually wards off with these behaviors. The mental habits that Rabbit has formed are clearly excessive compared to the hazards they're intended to neutralize. Eeyore. Chronic depression. Eeyore experiences chronically low mood and feelings of hopelessness. He's always with symptoms and depressed more days than not. He constantly looks at the negative, expects bad things to happen, and never tries to have a positive outlook on life. He doesn't try to be cheerful and experiences his depression as the default state, as opposed to episodic. His gloomy mood leads to low self-esteem and feelings of despondency. He has given up on recovery and accepts his state, as if it is hopeless to try and get out of it. He never has a manic episode, ruling out the possibility of bipolar disorder. Rue. Autism spectrum. Rue is mentally shut in and lacks awareness of what's going on around him. He's unaware of social cues and subtexts. He alternates between over-enthusiastic and reckless behavior on the one hand, and sitting impassively in his mother's pouch on the other. He has difficulty understanding and expressing emotions. In conversations, he repeats back what is said to him without understanding the meaning behind the words. His limited awareness prompts him to ignore his mother's warnings and wander off into dangerous situations. Though his symptoms are persistent, Rue is still in early childhood, meaning there's a chance of recovery or of his diagnosis transitioning to ADHD. Christopher Robin, schizophrenia. Christopher Robin believes he can talk to animals and creates an entire fantasy world that only he lives in. He likely has two distinct ego states, an ordinary one in the real world and a magical one in the 100-acre wood. His excessive cognitive fluidity created this world and all the characters in it. A theater where he plays every part. The different personalities of each character are, in reality, fragments of his own personality projected onto toy animals. He hears voices even when alone and has alterations in memory, consciousness, and perception. His unusual thought patterns are persistent and not bound to isolated incidents.